Muted. Ah. Oh, afternoon, everyone.
Hello there.
Hey. Megan, I'd like to thank you for answering all of my random emails. So just upfront, thanks.
Of course, that's what I'm here for.
No matter how random they are, right? So,
I'll find you the answer if I can.
thank you. Hey there, Larry.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hello,
Good evening.
how's everybody?
I'm good. I'm good, I think. Everybody's looking forward to Christmas, I hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that should be a good turn for everyone. So yeah, it'll be good.
But safe, I'm always nervous about safety when the whole family gets together. It's like, oh gosh, it's, we have to figure out how to do that as safe as possible.
No, we're constantly being challenged with it, right? So
I know, it's all the time.
yeah. Oh gosh. Thinking I may buy some of those home tests. I was just thinking that'd be fun to have at your house, 3-4
Yeah.
tests.
I
Why
know,
not? So
yeah,
I think I'll buy some.
I know, probably will.
Are they truly effective, or what's the prognosis on them?
I think they're like 75%. I think is the latest I hear. So I don't know if anybody's heard anything different, but
Yeah,
just watching TV and thinking, yeah, that's 75% is better than nothing.
yeah, that's true.
I also heard that it saves time, like if you have to go get tested, then you have to schedule yourself to get tested, and then you go out and possibly expose other people, where if you have those on hand at home, you can just quickly test yourself in the privacy of your home at your own convenience, which could be, anytime, day or night. So
Yeah. So that would save some time.
I'm not sure they're acceptable for travel, though, are they?
I think if you get the type that they actually watch you do it,
Okay.
so, I mean, you've got to show that it's you taking the test and not just somebody else,
Right.
So I don't know exactly how that works, but
Yeah.
interesting.
it could be awkward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. So it is 4:00. I see Stacy's here, and Megan, I don't know if you or Stacy were going to take roll today, but
I can go ahead and take roll. Are we ready to start the meeting?
let's see, I think we have a quorum. Yes, it looks like we do. So we can go ahead and start. I know a few people are running late and some will have to join while they're driving, so we may not see their picture, but we'll just go ahead and start at 4. So
Okay.
thank you.
Board Member Tiffany,
Here.
Board Member Sylvester,
Present.
Board Member McWilliams, Board Member Kurtzen, Board Member Johnson,
Here.
Board Member Fuentes,
Here.
Board Member Duff,
Here.
Board Member Davis, Board Member Darby,
Present.
Vice Chair Dillard,
Here,
Chair Castaños.
Thank you, Megan. And Patricia is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today. So Patricia.
I pledge of allegiance to the United States. Yeah, I can't even remember the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'll say it with you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Flashback to our elementary school days. so-
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah. Thank you. So, first of all, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda today?
Yes, staff has one deletion to the agenda for item 5.2 under current business.
Okay. So we will meet up with Perry Story in January. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you. And are there any public comments not related to agendized items, Megan, or?
We have no public comments
Okay,
submitted
great.
at this time.
Thank you. Any conflict disclosures about any items on the agenda from any of the board members? Looks good. Then we can go ahead with item 5.1, La Mesa Police Department updates. And it looks like Captain Nicholas is here with us.
Hello,
Welcome.
Chair Costanos and entire board. Good to see everybody and good evening. So we only have a couple updates today. I wanted to let everybody know that over the last couple of weeks, the Chief of Police has been going through the captain process. As you know, La Mesa has two captains. When Chief Sweeney was promoted, that vacated a position. So we've done the testing and he's completed all the interviews. And we hope that within a few weeks, he's going to name the replacement for his old position. So then we're back to full staff with our upper management. So we're looking forward to that. And some of the Community Police Oversight panel was, board was part of the panel for those interviews. So we really, really appreciate the help. I think it's really important that we look to all of you to help guide our police department as we move forward. And that includes looking at the upper leadership as well and having some influence on who we pick. So thank you for that. The second thing is it's been almost a year and the police department has enjoyed all of their interactions with every single one of you through, the beginning stages with Chad Bell to putting stuff together for the ad hoc groups and all of the engagement with the city management and the police management and the Community Police Oversight Board. We have really benefited and we know that we're going to be a stronger city as a result of all of your hard work and partnership. So thank you very much for that. And we look forward to moving into the future in 2022 and making this even a tighter relationship. So that's all I have, Chair. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Captain Nicholas. And we feel very comfortable working with you and Chief Sweeney. You have both been very professional and supportive of the work we're doing. And we've also tried to be supportive of the work you're doing. So we honor and respect your expertise and we appreciate your willingness to hear the public thoughts on things. So thank you for mentioning that. And also for mentioning the interview process with the community panel. 4 members of the CPOB served a full day on that panel, and that's pretty impressive. So we thank you for your input, for giving a full day to the La Mesa Police Department. And I know Chief Sweeney and Captain Nicholas both appreciated your presence there. So thank you for that. Very impressive work.
May I piggyback on Captain Nicholas, please?
Larry, go ahead.
I'm at the NACO convention right now, and it is eye-opening. And let me assure the board that we are blessed to have the personnel to work with, from Carlo and Chief Sweeney, Captain Nicholas, all the police department people. I'm amazed at how difficult different communities across the US are having to get a CPOB set up and go. And even if they get it set up, there's little or no cooperation. It's astounding to me. So we are blessed, and thank you, Madam Chair, for showing the appreciation to them.
Thank you for that, Larry. I know it's kind of amazing what other communities go through. So we truly are blessed to have the police department leadership that we have. So thank you for letting us know about that. Any other comments? All right, thank you, Chief Nicholas. I mean, Captain Nicholas. Sorry, I'm already promoting you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is 5.3, updated independent police auditor policies and procedures. And you've received a copy of the updated version with changes in either red or purple, depending on how your computer views it. Any concerns, questions, clarifications you might want on this document? Is there anything that just, opens up a concern or something that doesn't make sense that you would like clarification on? And we would be happy to work through this with you. So comments? And it looks like Patricia Dillard has her hand raised.
Yeah, I had a comment regarding under Article, I guess that's 6, right? Article 6.
4, yeah.
Excuse
I
me,
see.
4. I always get the Roman numerals.
I-
Okay, so under A, section A, in red, where it has LMPD generated complaints in which the IPA has an investigative interest are those regarding serious misconduct. I would move to have that statement, that sentence removed because it's redundant. Don't know if I get any disagreement on that. And then to continue on with La Mesa Police Department generated complaints concerning routine personnel matters addressed through the LMPD progressive disciplinary process, such as the excessive tardiness and other minor personnel infractions would not be subject to audits by the IPA. Can we add or redo this statement to include some type of pattern? Because you wouldn't necessarily maybe do something that needed to be told to the IPA if it happened once, but if it was an excessive reoccurrence, then it would make sense to have this statement. So just your comments on those two sentences.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dillard. And it looks like Carlo Tomaina would like to respond to that or has a
Yes.
comment.
Thank you for that question, Vice Chair Dillard and members of the board. This is somewhat of a technical question. I'd like to invite our IPA, Mr. Rasmussen, to offer his perspective on how these types of complaints are investigated, to what degree, to help address the question raised by the Vice Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a common problem nationwide. And the community or the industry standard is pretty much the way to think about these quality of service, rudeness, speeding, tardiness, those types of allegations. Traditionally, those are handled by the department, and rightfully so. When you look at it holistically, for instance, instead of it being a police officer, let's say it's a member of the parks department or the road department, and they're excessively tardy, which is the example. How would discipline be handled in those cases? Yeah, they need to be tracked within the department so that if there's a pattern, then the department can take action. But CPOB and the IPA were really not the right mechanism on quality of service type of complaints. The type of complaints that we want to focus on throughout the industry, not just in La Mesa, are force, bias, corruption. Those are the big three that these boards were set up to deal with. To delve into the internal disciplinary system of the police department vis-a-vis the fire department or parks, you're sort of making a double standard on how you would treat your employees. So the expectation could get confusing. And I frankly think if we're not satisfied, by we, I mean CPOB, with the actions that the chief makes, then that's when the CPOB could go to the mayor or the city manager, the elected officials, and say, hey, look, Officer Smith is repeatedly late to work. That adversely impacts our ability to do our job. And we think he needs something more than this. But La Mesa uses the progressive punishment system like most departments do. It's really not something that IPA or CPOB are set up to deal with.
So thank you for that clarification. And I do think that, yeah, the complaints that you mentioned should go through the progressive discipline process. I think that's definitely appropriate. That's what the union and the administration have agreed to. I think that while, you know, those, as you mentioned, if, I don't think that would happen with our current chief, but if, for example, somebody received numerous complaints for using rude language or outbursts that were, excessive anger or something like that, if a pattern develops and the administration doesn't do anything about it, I think the IPA would have the expertise to say, okay, now we need to step in. And I think it's a good idea to offer that language that we say, that we allow the IPA to, identify there is a clear pattern of minor personal infractions that that negatively impact the ability of the police department to serve the community well. And I think coming from people who have worked in law enforcement and understand the contract from the union and the progressive discipline process, you'd probably have a pretty good idea of when that would be appropriate.
There's no doubt, and our office stands ready to do whatever it is that y'all want done. I would just caution you that within the industry nationwide, these types of complaints, and I could personally testify, I decline on submission. And the reason is that's a leadership issue within the department. And if we don't believe that the department is policing itself well on these infractions, right, then the discussion maybe should be about leadership versus anything else. The police department should reflect community standards. And what I would strongly urge you to consider is that we have many departments within the city where these problems as cited, these examples as cited, are applicable. And why do we want to have, how can we justify or defend a different administrative approach to a purely administrative issue than we do with the other 70% of our employees, if you will? I think that, I think it's a mistake because frankly, I think we should be focusing on those issues that resulted in the formation of this board and this office. and let the police department handle routine personnel matters as they would. I know that when I did this very job in Fresno, Dennis, who's in our office, was the IA commander. And I think Dennis can tell you my answer to these types of topics were, you guys handle them. If this is acceptable to you and your leadership, you're going to have to stand tall in front of your community and your elected officials. I'm not going to come in here and clean up may not be the right word, or deal with or address what are otherwise de minimis personnel actions. And I'm not disagreeing that if there's a pattern of the same problem, that it adversely affects the workforce, because it does. But I would think that Chief Sweeney and Captain Matt can handle this real well. They don't need Dennis or I saying, hey, Joe's late to work all the time. I'd be more alarmed by why Joe's late to work rather than the fact that he is late to work.
Well, I agree with you on that, in that regard that you mentioned, but I'm saying if there is a pattern, and again, we're not always going to have Chief Sweeney and Captain Nicholas. So if we have leadership that looks the other way when aggressive actions are occurring again and again with one individual, I think when you see a repeated pattern, there's a clear pattern of this type of thing that should be dealt with. And it's not, I think it would be a good idea. Dennis, did you have your hand up? I'll let you.
I did, and I think Vice Chair Dillard makes a good point, and so do you, with regard to this pattern, because we have seen that happen in agencies. And you know, being late to work is one thing, but a person that's shouting at people, being rude to people, those are the types of actions that break down community trust. And I agree 100% with Rick. Those are comparatively, relatively per instance, a minor-ish sort of thing, although none of us want to see that at all. But I think what we're going to see is the police department is taking steps, and Captain Nicholas could probably jump in here on this, but one of the things that I know that they're actively working on is a early warning system, because one sergeant may identify an issue, and then that officer goes to a different shift, and then another sergeant identifies an issue. But they don't know about maybe the issue that has come up originally. This tracking system, this early warning and early alert system, will help the department leadership to find those instances much quicker and then deal with them appropriately. And like I said, so it's my understanding, based on some recent software demonstrations I've had the opportunity to sit in, the department is working in that regard.
Captain Nicholas, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thanks, Chair Costanos. Just to piggyback on what Dennis was saying, the department is moving forward with a program, and that's called LEFTA, which is an early tracking system for a number of areas within the police department. One of them being internal complaints, use of force, and a few other modules that will help us track these types of things. And if we start seeing a pattern, it will be dealt with within the agency unless there's other direction. But it will be recognized and it will be dealt with and it will be tracked.
Vice Chair Dillard.
Yeah, I'm glad that Captain Nicholas mentioned the part about internal complaints, because when I think of tardiness, I think of, you know, that's a managerial. They should be able to handle that. Why would we be concerned with someone who's tardy unless it's like Dennis said, there's a reason behind why this person is tardy. But I think of, in this section, I think of things that, even though it just says other minor personnel infractions, a minor personnel infraction to me in regards to the CPOB would be maybe a person who feels totally comfortable speaking in a derogatory fashion in a general way to a small group of people that are within the police department. For instance, making comments about people's race, or speaking about how someone looks, and speaking in racial tones that are, or even racial undertones that are derogatory. Because I would want another police officer to be able to feel comfortable to make a complaint that someone feels totally comfortable talking derogatorily about another person, whether it's just a homeless person or whether it's just, I don't know, just something that they came across that day, where someone would feel comfortable that they could just speak against that person for their race or the way that they look, or because they're dirty or whatever. I just think that along those lines would be something that the CPOB would be more concerned with, because that is an indicator of racist and racism. And it's either going to be shared by the people that are listening. In other words, they concur, and that's why it's okay for that person to talk that way. And I know I'm just giving an example, but as far as the CPOB is concerned, I mean, those are some of the issues that have caused so many, problems. The systemic racism is just carried through. And I just think that we want to make sure that our police officers are not promoting that activity.
Yeah, I think I touched on the base that bias of any type is suitable for IPA review, and is a bedrock of the CPOB and what the CPOB is trying to accomplish. So any action of bias is not de minimis in any manner. The example that was given is tardiness, and other minor allegations. Those are best, in my opinion, are best handled within the department in accordance with department and community standards. Bias is one of the bedrocks of what we would investigate right from the get-go. Bias, force, and corruption. And again, I know that we would have to defend a different administrative system to deal with routine personnel matters within one part of the government versus all of the other parts of the government. And I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that we would get pushback from other entities within the department. And frankly, rightfully so. If you're late for the parks department or you're late for the fire department, that's purely a personnel action and should be treated as such.
Carlo, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. One thing I'd like to add just to the conversation here is what we attempted to do with this item was to meet in good faith with the POA president to discuss some very specific and narrow concerns or questions that were raised about the policies and procedures. So in this section, Article 4, Section 1, subsection A, the question posed by the POA is the CPOB looking at minor personnel matters, which are already governed by a variety of policies and procedures under LMPD, but also the city? And the answer to that is no, we're not looking at things like this. If the CPOB is concerned, as Vice Chair Dillard discussed, about bias, and as our IPA clarified, that's one of those issues that's definitely identified in the mandate of the CPOB. So what we're trying to do here with this language is identify and address the very specific concern brought to us by the POA in order to be able to move this item forward to the City Council. And so we try to choose the language as carefully as possible to address that narrow issue without changing the meaning or intent of this section.
Thank you. Thank you for all these comments. It really helps us determine how to best frame this language here. And I think basically we don't want to get into anything that's covered in progressive discipline. That's part of their discipline process. We don't need to get engaged in that. But if, you know, something happens where there's an outburst, an angry outburst to members of the community, that happens, we lose our temper. If it's an ongoing problem and it seems to keep coming up again and again, then it's no longer a minor infraction. And that's where I'd like the IPA to weigh in and say, there's something more to this. This is the third complaint about angry outbursts, and we need to take it further. So what I'd like to add on to that second sentence there is something to the effect that the IPA will identify if there's a clear pattern of even minor personal infractions, especially if it involves force, bias, or corruption, or leads to that. Somehow we need to be able to identify that a pattern can end up becoming serious. At first, not so much. Once or twice, it happens. I'm going to let Dale give us weigh in from the legal standpoint. So thank you, Dale.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to start by saying I think this is a healthy conversation you all are having. I think from my perspective, this is a bit more of a policy question than a legal one. I will briefly read from the section of the ordinance that's sort of the background of this part of the procedures. So within section 2.30.120, which pertains to the IPA, it lists the sort of the essential functions and duties of the IPA. And the fourth one listed is to review and assess for objectivity, thoroughness, and appropriateness the internal affairs, investigations, and dispositions of any complaints of misconduct by the LMPD or its officers at the request of the CPOB, regardless of how the complaint was received. So that, you know, that's kind of just the background. As long as you all think what you construct today is consistent with that, I think from a legal perspective, you're fine. I think it's a fair point by the POA that the board and the IPA were not set up to monitor things like if someone's late for a meeting or late for work one day. I think that's a fair point. What we struggled with as council was, what language do you come up with to carve that out? What language, you know, where do you draw the line in terms of the edit here? I will say, frankly, I think the line about regarding serious misconduct, I think that the phrase serious misconduct is legally vague, and I've been uncomfortable with that phrase throughout. So I think the suggestion on the table that that sentence be removed both removes some of that ambiguity, and also, as Vice Chair Dillard said, it's a bit redundant with the sentence following. So I think that's fine. You know, I think it's up to you all to figure out what you want to do with that other sentence. The pattern question, I think you guys should keep talking about. I think this has been a great conversation, and it might be wise to incorporate Mr. Rasmutten's you know, three categories of bias, force, or corruption in there some way as well. I think that's a useful grouping of things.
Thank you, Dale. So let me see if Vice Chair Dillard is comfortable with this. If we remove that first sentence about serious misconduct, and we start with LMPD generated complaints concerning routine personnel matters addressed through the LMPD's progressive discipline process, such as excessive tardiness and other minor personnel infractions, would not be subject to audits by the IPA unless, and this is what I'm adding, unless the IPA identifies a clear pattern of minor personal infractions involving force, bias, or corruption, or corruption. That way we've got Rick's statements in there. We're talking about a clear pattern, which Dale had alluded to, and Dennis's concern about clear pattern as well. Sometimes minor things at first we don't need to deal with. And again, as I said earlier, I don't think anything like this would occur with Chief Sweeney and Captain Nicholas, because they handle things really well and do the right thing. But we don't know in the future. So it'd be good to have these procedures in place. So if anything changes in the future, we still have the IPA's input to help us along. Dale, you have another comment?
Thank you, Chair. I think Rick would agree, and let me know if not, that, you know, an incident of bias, force, or corruption does not require a pattern for it to be looked at. So I would move that earlier in the sentence and say, LMPD generated complaints concerning routine personal matters unrelated to bias, force, or corruption, just to make sure that a single one of those would still be flagged.
That's really a great idea. Yeah, because that's automatic. So at this point, it's just, then my sentence would just end, or the end of that sentence would add on, unless the IPA identifies a clear pattern of minor personal infractions. So that would include just losing your temper. It's unprofessional. You know, there might be other situations, you know, using disrespectful language, or inappropriate language, or human interactions are not appropriate, power plays. There's a lot of things that may not rise to the level of force, bias, and corruption, but if there's a pattern that we continue to see complaints about the same thing for an individual, clearly, you know, that needs to be addressed. So again, like I said, I don't foresee that happening with current leadership. I'm just looking into the future. So we need to always be prepared. Other comments, questions? Do people feel okay with that additional, that phrase added to the end of that sentence?
And I just want to apologize for, I think I said in the very beginning, I mentioned Dennis, but I meant to say Rick, so apologize for that.
They're both good. They're both helpful. So I'm glad they both weighed in.
I think that the statement, the rephrasing of the statement works. And if we remove the first sentence, that is more in line with clarification. And it covers us for any people going forward that may come into a position of, a superior position, such as a chief or like such like. So I think we're covered there. I mean, I see that as us being covered.
Thank you. Carlo, you have another comment.
I just have a request that if the board feels like you've arrived at a resolution to the language, I would recommend making a motion and identifying what the language you want to see in it is, so that we can go back and work with general counsel on an update to the policies and procedures.
So let me reread the addition, a little add-on to that second sentence. We removed the first red line sentence about serious misconduct. We added on to the second sentence at the end, after would not be subject to audits by the IPA unless the IPA identifies a clear pattern of minor personal infractions. Does that sound appropriate, Rick, Dennis, Carlo?
That makes perfect sense. And I don't want to keep banging the same drum, but if the department isn't taking the right steps on repeated violation of otherwise de minimis personnel actions, then maybe the issue is not the policy, but it's department leadership.
And I would just append to that, does that motion include the language suggested by our general counsel tying back to race, use of force, and bias? Just a
Oh,
question.
thank you. Yes.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
move,
Well,
move-
let's, before we make a motion, Larry, let me just have Dale weigh in because I did forget that. Dale, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to just read what my understanding is of the revision before the motion is made.
Okay.
So my understanding is that first new sentence regarding serious misconduct will be struck, and it will then read, LMPD generated complaints concerning routine personal matters addressed through the LMPD's progressive disciplinary process and unrelated to bias, use of force, or corruption, comma, such as excessive tardiness and other minor personnel infractions, comma, would not be subject to audits by the IPA unless the IPA identifies a clear pattern of minor personnel infractions.
Perfect. Thank you for catching that. And Rick, thank you for catching that. Larry, you?
yes, I am moving that we forward the updated independent police auditor policies and procedures as edited by Vice Chair, Chair, and Council to City Council for consideration and approval.
We have a second.
I second.
Thank you. Yashika seconded it. And Megan, I'll let you go ahead and
Board Member
Take-
Tiffany, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Sylvester, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member McWilliams, did you come in by any chance? Yes. Board Member McWilliams, how do you vote?
Muted.
I see that he's on here. Board Member McWilliams, are you able to unmute yourself to vote? Okay, we'll go to Board Member Kurtzen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Johnson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Fuentes, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Duff, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Davis, how do you vote? Board Member Darby, how do you vote?
Yes,
Vice Chair Dillard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Castanos, how do you vote?
yes.
And then I'm going to try Board Member McWilliams one more time. Board Member McWilliams, how do you vote? Okay. Motion passes with all board members voting yes.
Thank you. And the next step is this procedures manual will go forward to the city council in January at their January meeting for approval. Am I correct in that? I believe that's where is
That's
that
correct. That would be staff's goal. I think what we would want to do is share the update with the POA for informational purposes, and then move the item to the city council in January for adoption.
Okay, perfect. I think it meets their concerns and because we definitely do not want to get into their progressive discipline process. So I think that meets all of the parties' needs. Thank you for everybody's input on that. Our next item on the agenda is the draft of the 2022 Community Police Oversight Board Work Plan. And Lynn has done a great job of adding many of the things we talked about at our last meeting. Any comments, clarifications, additions, anything you feel is lacking or missing or needs to be clarified here, please feel free to raise your hand or comment. And one thing that came to mind, and Patricia, you can help me on this because we discussed this earlier about we really couldn't find anything in the work plan regarding the IPA and our work with the IPA. And maybe that needs to be a whole separate item, work plan item, because it's such a big part of what we're going to be doing this year. Rick, do you want to weigh in on that?
You know, we stand ready to work on whatever it is that y'all want us to work on. That's why we're here. We hope that we can provide value. But work plans, I think, are definitively up to you guys.
And I think a good portion of the work we're going to be doing this year, now that we have the IPA on board, is we're going to collaborate with the IPA to review audits of LMPD investigations. Is that correct, Rick and Dennis?
Yep, that's the very purpose of the office.
So it might be a good idea, unless somebody can find it hidden somewhere in any of these other work plan items. I couldn't, and Patricia couldn't, but we might have overlooked something. So I would ask that number 11 state exactly that: collaborate with the IPA to review audits of LMPD investigations. Is there anything more we need to add, or any specifics, or does that cover it?
Chair, I would say that that's a relatively simple addition that staff can make. And I think because we don't know exactly what we're going to be working on in the coming year, I think the broader statement that you articulated probably works best.
Great, yeah, I think it would help to just have that in there, because I think a lot of our time may be spent on reviewing the audits that the IPA will work, or it has been working on.
Do we have a tentative date to start that? Do we know approximately when next year?
Dennis or Rick, do you have an answer?
Are you talking about the historical case review or current ongoing case review?
Probably historical. I suppose we're going to start with those.
Okay, we're on those now. We're about 40% of the way through them. We expect to be done, hope to be done by the end of February. And then whatever format it is that is decided upon for the discussions therein, because you got to remember, a lot of that material is governed by POBAR rules and other things that we have to be very careful about to protect privacy of the employees as established in state law. So that's one of the things that we're currently going. The review of the cases themselves, that's really not hugely difficult. It's how they're formatted and reported back upon you. Currently, I believe the way we're going to, at this point, subject to change, is I'll handle that via an oral briefing to y'all.
So Dale Larson, you wanted to comment?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to make the point that, a lot of the way that these audits are handled and all, and that sort of thing is dealt with by the procedures that you all just passed. And so that it, to some extent, it does make sense for these procedures to be fully ratified. I've always expected that those procedures would be fully ratified by the City Council before the sort of auditing and reviewing of audits process really kicks into gear. Just wanted to make that point.
Okay, so it wouldn't hurt to add that to our work plan. It's just that we can't start that process until the procedures have been approved by City Council.
I think that's right.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, for that question. Other comments about the work plan? Anything you were wondering or needed clarification on?
I just wanted to ask, and I do like the idea of, adding in that we'll be collaborating with the IPA, because at this particular point, it's kind of inferred, but not really stated. So that's good. but I wanted to ask Dennis and Rick, as far as I know of, we don't have anything that's most recent. So at this particular point, the things to talk about would be the audits that you currently are doing. I know that as far as the community is concerned, they aren't satisfied with, whatever has been publicly discussed. So I think that, it is important that we do talk about those incidents because people are not satisfied. And it would be helpful to just get some clarification. So I'm looking forward to hearing about those past issues. And I guess that if there were anything that was more current, you guys would just discuss it at that time that you were starting the audit process, if we didn't ask you already.
All right, well, maybe I should give you an update. There are no current pending allegations out there. There have been no complaints filed as it relates to those actions, other than the letters that y'all received in the public comment section, which I'm addressing on the 11th. When I'm out there, I'm meeting with that individual. So other than that, there are no other pending audits or even cases that would qualify as an audit.
Right. One thing I thought might be important to add in work plan item number 2, the list of items regarding training and continuing education for CPOB members. It's missing the hands-on training opportunities such as ride along, and there are opportunities for hands-on training, and it's really not addressed in any of these. So I'm wondering if goal number 2, Lynn, goal number 2, receive training on LMPD policies and procedures, including officer training, vehicular stops, arrests, use of force, including hands-on training opportunities. Can we add that into goal number 2 on work plan item number 2?
Absolutely.
Okay. And another thing on work plan item number 4, goal number 3, it says approve formal complaint form and make it accessible to the public. We did approve the formal complaint form, so that's done. I think another area here talks about making it more accessible to the public. I'm wondering if we should strike that, because we've already put it on the website. We've implemented the complaint form. We finalized it. So that item, that goal number 3 has really been done. The one thing we do still need to do is make it more accessible or known to the public, and that's really covered in community outreach section.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we want to strike number 3 from the work plan.
Yeah, I think it's work plan item number 4, goal 3. So just that specific goal.
Okay, all right, we
You
will
see
do
that?
that. We can definitely make that edit.
And then work plan item number 5, look at goal 5. And under the middle column, tracking milestones, 5.3 says explore increasing police officer interactions at elementary schools. And I would like to take out elementary and just put schools. And then in parentheses, letting the children talk. So letting the children / youth talk. I think, certainly outreach to the middle schools and the high schools is also part of what we like to do.
Okay, all right, I've got that. We'll make that edit.
Could that be
And,
student?
Larry, go ahead. Larry,
Sorry, could that be students as opposed to child/youth?
I like that. That's much better. Thank you. Students would be a better and much better flow. Thank you, Larry.
Okay, I've got it.
Thank you. In work plan, item number 6, goal 1, in the middle column, tracking milestones, 1.1, we talked about, in red, it added homeless outreach and mobile engagement, or the home program. For example, I wonder if we should mention the mobile crisis response team. I believe that's MCRT. I believe that's the acronym for the county-wide program that deals with crisis intervention. If Captain Nicholas is still nearby, if he could clarify that.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and I'm just thinking, because that's such a new item for La Mesa PD, it would be great to identify that. I think that's wonderful that you guys are working with that as well.
Okay, so 1.1, we're adding MCRC to tracking milestone 1.1.
Right.
Okay,
And let's see, what else? That looks, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's looking good. Anybody else want to weigh in or make any or have any objections to the changes I recommended? Thank you for your input, and thank you for the help in just clarifying some of these things, Rick and Dennis. All right. So we have the work plan. And at this point, we're ready, I believe, if everybody's comfortable, we're ready to approve it so we can attach it to our end of the year report that goes to City Council. So.
Okay, I move that we forward the 2022 Community Police Oversight Board Work Plan as edited by Chair to City Council for consideration and approval.
I'll second that.
And Bob Duff seconded it.
Okay, Board Member Tiffany, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Sylvester, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member McWilliams, how do you vote? Okay. Board Member Kurtzen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Johnson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Fuentes, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Duff, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Darby, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dillard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Costanos, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan. So we can move on to item number 6 on the agenda, staff and board member announcements. Do we have any announcements? I know Larry's busy at NACOL and ready to share someday a lot of information he's gathered. Larry, do you want to comment on anything?
Well, I feel like I've sprained 2 or 3 muscles in my brain with all of the information being inundated with. But one thing that I've come out with it is I would strongly recommend that everyone attend one of these. The next year it's going to be in Fort Worth. And I would also like to see maybe Chair Costanos, you and I can get together with the San Diego CPBOB and petition to have NACOL annual convention in San Diego.
Yeah, that would be nice. I like that idea. Thank you, Larry. And thank you for, attend. I know a number of us have attended the sessions online, but Larry actually physically went to the conference. So we appreciate him spending so much time with that.
It winds up tomorrow, so.
Okay,
I'm
great.
still there.
Thank you so much. That's really fabulous. Other announcements? Go ahead, Bob.
I was going to comment on the level of competency for the persons who interviewed as candidates for the captain's position. I was highly impressed by the educational background. We had actually two candidates in there that held a doctorate. One was an attorney also, and every other candidate that was in there had at least a bachelor's, but most had a master's degree. They were well educated, and I was really impressed by the fact that if this is the level of people that are looking to get into our district police officers program, we have a lot of highly qualified people already aboard. I'm impressed by that. Also, I am going to go on a ride along tonight to accommodate that, because that's my position tonight.
Thank you. That was my next reminder, was make sure we sign up for a ride along. I know it's hard right now with the holidays coming up and everybody's got busy schedules, but yeah, see if you can contact Lieutenant Chad Bell and schedule that, even if for January. It would be great if we could all finish that up. Thank you. And thank you, Bob Duff, for participating in that process. We appreciate your and Larry Darby and Leroy Johnson's involvement. So thank you.
I'd just like to wish everybody a happy holiday and let you all know how much I appreciate working with everybody through this year. I think we got a lot done. I know it seemed like, at times we were watching paint dry with all the details, but we got through it. And I want to give a special thanks to our council, because they were with us during the first part of the pandemic, and they just kind of hung in there with us and supported us greatly. So, just a shout out to them for just, agreeing to be here with us again. And hopefully they'll be okay with, dealing with us next year. But just a special shout out to them, and then to everyone else as well, especially Carlo. He bends over backwards to help us. And I'm still rooting for Megan to get a pay raise. I don't know if she ever got one, but she deserves one still. I'm not backing down on that. But happy holidays to everybody. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yeah. Thank you all for your work. And our next meeting will be January 19th. So it'll be the third Wednesday of the month at 4 o'clock. So we will see you there, and we will prepare for our annual report. We're making progress. And Rick, you have a comment?
Just a reminder, Dennis and I will be out there on the 11th if anybody wants to meet in a small group.
Great. January 11th. Okay, we'll put that on our calendars. And usually you're there afternoons.
Yeah, we get in the morning and leave the following day.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that. So mark your calendars for January 11th to meet with the IPA. Any other comments, questions? We appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful holiday season. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.